For those of you who are just joining us today, my name is Lucia. I'm Las Fotos Project's Executive Director. Just a quick housekeeping note. For today's session, it's best viewed in side-by-side mode. And so you can do that by going to the View button at the top of your screen and selecting side-by-side mode. That way you can see all of our speakers and our interpreters for the day, as well as our slideshow and photos that we'll be sharing. Today we're excited, actually all day today. We've been having such wonderful conversations with our awardees in the categories of self-expression, advocacy, and now editorial. They've been such inspirational conversations. I myself am feeling very uplifted and motivated and very inspired by what has been shared throughout the day today and the beautiful images that have been shared as well. So I'm very excited for our last conversation of the day. And today we're joined by editorial awardee Cara Romero and youth awardee Romy Estrada, as well as our moderator and journalist Stephanie Mendez, who will be talking about their work in editorial photography and just, and their creative process in general. Just another quick reminder, if you haven't already checked it out, our silent auction is up and it closes out at noon tomorrow. So be sure to check those out and make your bid on your favorite photograph. Photographs were donated by over 50 women photographers from across the country. 100% of the proceeds will go to support our programs for teen girls through photography and mentorship. And just now you are also listening to a special mix by Kaylin Hype. If you have the All Access Pass, so you have a link for that as well in your inbox. If not, you can purchase that separately at our website as well, lasfotosproject.org/the Photo Awards. And also just some important information for those of you who are also just joining us for the first time today, we're providing closed captioning for this event, as well as ASL interpretation from our friends at Interpret That. Please note that interpreters may switch out every 15 minutes, so there may be a 1-minute gap as they switch. We're also hosting a Q&A session towards the end of this conversation today. So if you have a question for our panelists today, you can drop it into the chat box as well, and we will get to your questions after the panelist conversations. We'd also like to thank our sponsors for the Photo Awards and our community partners, Getty Images, Morena Strategies, Rad Furniture Lander LA, Photographic Arts Council Los Angeles, Interpret That, Plantitas, Sunflowers and Brie, Santitos Candles, Center for Photographers of Color, and Photographers Green Book. And before we officially kick off today's conversation, I'd like to take a moment to honor the space we're presenting from today, the lands and waters of the Tongva, Quiche, Fernandino, Tatavian Band of Mission Indians, Gabrielino Band of San Gabriel Mission Indians. And we'd also like to honor the Shoshone Paiute tribe, whose water we receive daily. And now let's welcome our moderator and our friend, Stephanie Mendez. Stephanie is a journalist and producer with an MA and BA in English Literature and Journalism from Cal State Long Beach. Her work has been featured across numerous print, digital, and broadcast platforms, including Fox, ABC News, E! News, Los Angeles Times, Spin, Nylon, Teen Vogue, and more. Her story on Las Fotos project for the Los Angeles Times also recently won second place for lifestyle feature in the 62nd annual Southern California Journalism Awards. Stephanie is also very passionate about punk, intersectional feminism, and Latinx representation in the media. Thank you so much for joining us today, Stephanie. And Stephanie is a great friend of the organization, so I'm so excited for her to join us today. So I will let you take away this conversation with Cara and Romy.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. This is Stephanie. Thank you for joining us, and congratulations to the winners of the Editorial Awards, Cara Romero and Romy Estrada. Cara is the Adult Award winner, and Romy is the Youth winner. So before we get started with the discussion, let's talk a little bit about the word editorial and what it means for those of you who might have questions about, well, what is editorial photography, right? The word editorial simply refers to material elements or content that's meant to be published. So in the case of editorial photography, it simply refers to images that tell a story. Think about when you open a copy of Vogue magazine, right? You'll usually see photo spreads of models and outfits and makeup and that kind of thing. And it's usually photo spreads without words, right? So the photos essentially tell the story. So with that being said, Romy and Kara, each of your editorial work is very different from one another. You both have very distinct styles and uses of photography under the editorial umbrella. Kara, your work ranges from fine art photography to documenting social issues in the Native community. And Romy, you're into fashion and portrait photography. So very separate, categories from both of you. And I'm sure the audience would love to learn about how you each developed these passions. So Kara, we'll start with you. I found out that you initially studied 2D art studio art, right, in college. So how did you go from that to photography, and particularly your interest in exploring Native identity and these issues?
Thank you for that question. My name is Cara Romero, and it started really young. I was born in Inglewood to interracial parents, and pretty quick thereafter, in 1979, we moved back with my dad's side of the family to the Chemehuevi Valley Indian Reservation, where I grew up my formative years as a small child. And then my parents divorced, and I ended up in an urban setting. I ended up in Houston, Texas. And for my entire life, I went back and forth between a really multicultural, majority minority neighborhood in Houston and the Indian reservation in Mojave Desert, California, San Bernardino County. And what I learned really early on, being in the urban setting, was that people in mainstream America really had no concept of what I meant when I said I'm Native American, or I'm Chemehuevi, or I'm from a reservation. And it started with holidays like Thanksgiving, and it really went all the way through to university level when I was studying cultural anthropology, and everything about Native Americans was taught as bygone. But here I had this, beautiful family and cousins and small community on the reservation in California, bursting with life and beauty, in a rural kind of village out there on the California side of Lake Havasu. And I knew really early on, I just wanted to give, I wanted to change the narrative, and I really wanted to give visibility to the beauty of my community. Because when I did see Native Americans in the media, it was always like, poverty or stereotypes, just the opposite of the pride that I felt being from my community. And I just, as fate would have it, took my first black and white film class at 21 years old, when I was still at the University of Houston. And I just knew, I just knew right away that this is how I was going to be able to change that visual narrative, was with photography. And it was just mad love from the first time I picked up my camera.
Thank you for sharing that history with us. Your work, it's so amazing, so beautiful. You clearly have so much talent and experience, and obviously you use it to highlight Native and Indigenous communities, especially through your own identity, which you just explained. It's such an interesting time too, and I'm glad that you touched on it, because it leads to the next question that I had for you, right? With the Black Lives Matter movement gaining traction this year, and so many conversations being had in every industry about the lack of Black and Brown talent, the lack of artistry and creativity that comes from our own communities, and how white gatekeepers continue to shut people like us out. These are issues that have always been widespread, right? But have especially gained momentum in the last couple of months. So you've clearly been documenting these kinds, like similar issues in the Native community long before these recent conversations. So can you tell us a little bit more about the importance of exploring this through your art? I know you touched on it a little bit, and you mentioned this in terms of your progression in your career, right? But for people who might not understand why it's important, can you tell us why it's important to take these sorts of images, especially when in the eyes of commercial photographers, like the editors of Vogue, these types of stories or images don't sell, right? They're not lucrative for these types of editorial platforms that focus on Eurocentric notions of beauty. So can you talk to us about that significance, and especially as it relates to your own work?
Well, this is Kara again, and I really think representation in media matters so much, in a way that it's all connected to the health of our respective communities that we come from. So when young people and young women and young Native Americans cannot see themselves reflected in media, it has an effect on their self-esteem. And when they do see themselves reflected in a way that an outside culture sees them, that can also be wrong and affect their self-esteem. And it's kind of like if you can't see yourself out there, you can't be something different. And so many other cultures have so many stories, so many ways of being that they're allowed. They're allowed to be doctors and lawyers and photographers. But sometimes when you come from a minority community, it's kind of like one story that emerges as who you are and who your community is. And I think it's really important for us to tell as many stories as possible from each of our communities through whatever kind of medium that you're interested in, so that we together collectively have as many stories out there as we want to be, because the truth is we're so dynamic and we're so diverse. And I think our youth really need that. I think we need that to kind of break through and find that equity in our society. It's really all connected, I would say.
Thanks for explaining that. That was said really well. Thank you. Romy, let's talk about you and talk about what inspired your interest in fashion and portrait photography. Tell us about, you're early in your career, but explain, what led you to doing the type of work that you do.
Yeah, I would say that I guess it all started when I was very young and I would travel a lot with my parents. My mom loves traveling. I've probably say I've been to like 4 or 3 different countries and a bunch of different states. And we always brought a camera everywhere. And it was just like it wasn't anything too fancy of a camera. It's just one that you buy at like Best Buy for like the cheapest you can find. And I just used it and started taking photos of my friends because I would follow people on I'd say I would follow people on Instagram, and it's photography is such a weird thing because it comes to you out of literally nowhere. I can't pinpoint an exact moment where it like sparked me. It was just, oh my gosh, I have to do this for the rest of my life. Um but yeah, I still use the same camera that was my mom's from like 7 years ago. I still use it to take all my photos. But from yeah, it just went there, and it was definitely difficult because like when you're young and I planned on, oh, I want to do something creative for the rest of my life, but I had no idea it would be specifically photography. So when it hit me all of a sudden, like, oh, I would love to do this for the rest of my life. It's probably like the best feeling ever. So yeah.
And Romy, similar to Kara, your images focus on identity and culture, even though they're very fashion centric, very chic in that sense. Your images are also very youthful, right? And I think maybe you can kind of tell me, right, if this is the case, but it seems like your images kind of steer towards identity and culture because you live in a city as diverse as LA, especially, LA having almost 50% of the population being Latinx. So why do you like doing fashion and portrait photography that focuses on communities of color? Especially because when you think of fashion photography, I mean, as I mentioned this earlier, it tends to focus on, right, this Eurocentric idea of the bodies that are being presented. So a lot of these bodies still are, white, thin, these kinds of ideals that are pushed and pushed by the fashion and modeling industry. So yours, on the other hand, it features a lot of brown people, a lot of Latinas. So tell me why your photography specifically focuses on that area.
Yes, of course. I would say when I started doing photography, the what really attracted me was, editorial, fashion, glamour, that type of stuff. But it was very Eurocentric, and it's just it's just strange that there are so many different beautiful people out there, but they just focus on one type. And I wanted to see women of color, and specifically my community, the Latinx community, reflected onto those like very feminine, like quirky, colorful, beautiful, just those types of friendship, fashion, and glamour. I just wanted to see that in photos. So if not saying nobody was doing it, it just wasn't highlighted as much. So I was like, okay, I'll do it too. So who knows, one day someone who wanted to see what I saw will see my work, and then they would be inspired themselves.
And are most of the women and femmes in your images, are they mostly your friends?
Yes, all of them are my friends, and if they're not, then I was introduced to them by a friend, and then we become friends from there. I would say I'm friends with 99% of the people in my photos.
Okay, hopefully this won't cause any fights in your life, but do you have a favorite person to photograph?
Yes, actually, the photo we're showing right now, that's my friend Kat, and she's my muse, my artistic muse. Literally, all my are of her. She's a fashion icon, and she loves having her photo taken anyways. And she trusts whatever I take of her, which is what I respect from her.
She photographs beautifully, but also you happen to be that photographer, so you photograph beautifully. I want to tell you both about some of my favorite images from both of your portfolios. Kara, I really love the images titled No Wall, which shows Native children against a white brick wall, and Evolvers, which shows children running in a field with energy windmills in the background. Kara, can you tell us about those images? And then tell me which images are your personal favorites.
This is Kara. I love those images. There was a really exciting opportunity. I was asked by the Desert X organization to be one of 25 international artists to do land-based art installation in Coachella Valley. It was unveiled in February of 2019, and the theme of the Desert X Biennial was a response to the landscape. And I was the only Indigenous person that had ever been asked to be one of the international artists to respond to the landscape. So I wanted to do that, of course, from an Indigenous perspective, which I think is really different from most people that are in Southern California, and also relates not only to the destruction of the ecosystem in Southern California, the watersheds, but also respond to the very violent wall to the south proposed. All four of these boys are from my reservation. So in loose reservation terms, I'm their auntie, and they're two sets of brothers. And we decided to work with the boys to respond to the landscape as spirit beings, so time travelers, ancestors that have arrived back in Coachella Valley, either from the past or from the future, to respond to the political and environmental landscape of Coachella Valley. So you see them here in evolvers in front of the windmills. The title says evolvers, that we embrace renewable energy, but oftentimes with big energy, you're always going to see environmental racism, and large or big energy goes into the backyard of people of color. And while the Mojave Desert and Coachella Valley and these gigantic washes seem like vast swaths of undeveloped land, there's actually a rich history of Indigenous peoples in those areas, including those washes that are the tide pools of the desert. Many people, many Indigenous people in the Southwest from both sides of the border have ancestry that predates colonial borders, including many federally recognized tribes in the Southwest. So with the opportunity to place those images on billboards, I really wanted to, as an Indigenous person from both sides of the border, and all four boys having ancestry, both Opata, Chemehuevi, Mojave, from both sides of the border, show love to our migrant workers and families, which are a large population in Coachella Valley. And that's what those two pieces are about. And they're two of my favorites.
Oh, perfect. I mean, I appreciate the work that you are doing, and with the explanations that you gave, I'm just blown away by the fact that you are doing this really critical work, and it's very beautiful at that. So I just want you to know I appreciate it so much. So you would say that these are also your favorite images, or do you have other ones that are especially close to you?
I really, I was talking about this last night, that you find your strengths as you mature as a photographer. And I'm from a line of women at Chemehuevi where we enjoy a great amount of gender equity in our tribe. We have shared tribal governance, and I was raised by my grandmother, who always taught me it was okay to take up space. And our women are very empowered from our tribe. And I think that that was something that it really comes through for me. And when I work with my friends and family as well, Romy, I really want that side to come through, like that really empowered strength. So my photographs where women take center stage, and I've kind of used my artistic license to make them otherworldly and have supernatural powers and medicine. That all really comes from that Indigenous worldview, that women have medicine and women have power, and we're not entirely from this world. So I like my female figuratives a lot.
And I definitely see that in the portraits that you've taken. They're so beautiful. I keep using that word, but beauty is just what comes to mind. So let's talk to Romy. Romy, you have several great photos too. Young adult women in the street, your friends, also all very beautiful women, femmes. Your photography is very street chic. You also have performers. So overall, it just comes across as very youthful, very edgy. I can see your photography gracing, Teen Vogue, that kind of thing. For me, my favorite is you have a Latina girl. She's dressed in white. She's got the beret. It looks very like Chicana, 90s type of a photo. It's very cool. So that's one of my favorites. The other one, she's also with someone else dressed in white. Again, I keep using the word edgy. That's what comes across to me. Can you tell me a little bit about those images and then tell me which ones are your personal favorites?
Yes. Do we have the photos here or
Can we
um,
cue them, please? Is that possible?
if not, that's totally fine. I just
We don't have those.
oh, it's okay.
Yeah, we'll try and populate them and pop them into the chat.
All right. I'll just answer the other question.
Go ahead.
It was sorry, could you repeat the last question?
No, of course. So I mean, those were my favorites, right? The girl with the beret, uh, Barrett. I don't know how to pronounce like the little clip.
Yeah.
And then there's another one with her and someone in white, and they've kind of got like they're side by side posing. So those are my favorites. Can you tell me a little bit about those images?
Yes. I believe those ones were taken outside of my friend Gracie's house, and I actually met Gracie through Lost Photos, and we both really liked that style you described, very young, very edgy, very chic, and we really bonded over that. And she had a clothing brand, and she wanted me to take the photos, and uh she had two of her friends come, and those two girls that I met that day were still friends. So yeah, I guess it just all came from there. That was such a great day. I think that was one of the days where I realized, oh, I love taking photos, because right when we got back, I just put the SD card in the laptop and I showed them the photos, and even when they weren't edited yet, I was like, wow, these are perfect. Like it was just the best feeling ever, like once you realize you have great photos. So yeah.
And I mean, it is a really great shoot. Those were the ones that I immediately was like, oh, I love these. I can see these in a magazine. So good. Are they your personal favorites, or do you have other ones that you consider your favorites that you love, you absolutely love?
Um I would say that's such a hard question, but those were, if someone asked if they could see my photos, I would definitely show them that set. It would I never pat myself on the back, but I think I did a pretty good job there.
You really did, and I think I speak for everyone when I say we'd love to see the whole set. I mean, you gave us a taste, now give us the whole dish, girl.
Of course, of course. And I need to update my website. Like I haven't updated it in like a year. I really need to get on that.
We appreciate that. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to take it to the Q&A. We're almost short on time a little bit, but the last question I'm going to ask is to Kara. You recently received the 2020 Radical Imagination Grant from the NDN Collective. Can you tell us a little bit about the award and how it will be used in your future work and projects?
This is Kara. I'm so incredibly humbled and honored to have received that grant. I had like 3 or 4 people send the link and the application over to me, and it was really a heartfelt application, but I really didn't know that I would end up getting it. And so I'm just incredibly excited. It is for a public art project in Southern California. There's a little bit of research and development to be done at the beginning of the project to exactly where the photographs are going to end up. But I'm hoping that they're definitely in a highly visible area in the Los Angeles area. And they're going to address Indigenous issues in Southern California, very specifically the brutal colonial history of California Native peoples in those areas, and simultaneously bring critical visibility and empowerment to the local Southern California tribes. That's a big honor and a very intimidating task, but I really feel like it's so necessary in Southern California because California Native Americans experience so much invisibility, while we're actually one of the states that have the highest population of Native Americans. We are there in Los Angeles. We have reservations throughout California, and everybody is on Indigenous land. And I really want to visibly communicate to people our warmth and our bravery and our how our indigeneity expresses itself in these modern urban settings. So that's a little bit about that grant, and I'm really excited to do it this year. I'm also excited to do it because it's going to be in a public art space, which creates accessibility and doesn't get impeded by COVID. People are going to be able to see these outdoors, and the accessibility to all peoples, all classes, all races. So that public art excites me.
It excites me to know that this will all be happening for you and manifesting. So I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say, we're looking forward to seeing this future work. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So we're going to go ahead and turn to the Q&A portion of this panel. So we do have a question up for you guys already, for you, Kara and Romy. The question comes from an anonymous attendee. The question is, what type of editing software do you like to use for your completed photographs, and what do you like about it? So who would like to go first, Romy or Kara?
That's actually really funny because I tried opening the Q&A thing and I accidentally opened up Lightroom right now. So I sorry, I was reading the question. For the type of editing software I use Lightroom, and I tried using Photoshop, but it's just too much. Maybe one day in the future. And I used to use my phone sometimes for editing. I used to use Facetune, but not for like retouching, but because they had a part of the app where you could add rainbows and stuff, and I really use that part of it. I would add like glitter and stuff. It was really fun.
So you made it very kawaii, right? Kara, what about you?
So I shoot with a Canon, and I bring that into my computer with Canon software, and then from there I go to the Photoshop bridge, and I work through the photos and rate them in in Adobe Bridge, and then from there I'll open them up in Photoshop. I guess what I like about it is the ability to handle really big files. So a lot of times I'm printing my photographs really big, and the files can get gigantic. Sometimes multi-layered files that are like 6 feet tall can be like 800 megabytes. Sometimes they even get over a gig, just one file. And I find that Photoshop CC can handle it. Additionally, there's something called interpolation. So when you have a file that starts out at maybe 25 inches tall, but you want to take it 75 inches tall, the Photoshop interpolation, whatever that is, program or software, it's just it's really good. There's no digital noise. They just are beautiful, really big, and you can see every eyelash and all the things that excite me as a photographer of humans.
Thank you both. And we are currently waiting for a couple of more questions. So to those of you who are watching, please feel free to ask any questions that you'd like to both Kara and Romy. I have one that I'd like to add while we wait for a couple of more. This is a question for Romy. You mentioned to me earlier today that you're hoping to eventually transition into the film industry, right? So can you tell us a little bit about that goal and what you hope to achieve? Additionally, where in the film industry do you hope to end up? Is it as a photographer on set? Is it as a producer? What category? Are you looking to go into the horror genre? What can people expect from you, hopefully in the future, in terms of your endeavors in this area?
Yes, I wanted to. I would want to screenwrite and direct in the future, and I think I would love to do like photos on set, because last year at Photoville, when I went with Lost Photos, we met some set photographers, and I asked one of the ladies who worked or who was there at the thing. I asked her, "Oh, how could I get this job? Like, what do I have to do?" And she was like, "Oh, you just kind of get it. Like, someone just has to give it to you." And I was like, "Okay, that doesn't help at all." So I was like, "Okay, this feels a little bit unrealistic. Not like the craziest thing, but it's definitely up there." So I found this like interest in like writing screenplays and stuff. It's just the weirdest feeling, like same with photography. It just comes to you out of nowhere that, oh my gosh, I want to do this so bad. It's that urge just to do it. So that's what I'm doing right now in quarantine. I love to write stuff. My friend and I, we email back and forth what we write, just weird stuff. But that's definitely where I want to go. I would love to write coming of ages. I'm not sure if that's just because I'm a teenager right now, so that's really all I know. But I think that's something I definitely want to do.
So will photography be part of your future work, or do you think it'll be more of like your passion project? Where does photography fit into your future?
Yes, I think I will, if I ever become that, hopefully I will, like I become what I wanted. I will 100% still be a photographer, and I will carry my camera around with me everywhere. But I think those two things kind of play into each other, because when I write, I sort of see like photos, I guess, or how I would frame stuff, like colors and composition and stories I'm telling. So I think photography has definitely helped me with this, because when I write, I need to see something. I need to paint a picture, I need to take a photo. And I think most of my inspiration comes from photography and photos that I see.
There's definitely that overlap. It's interdisciplinary is the word we use in academia, with all of these different industries and areas merging, and I definitely agree with you. So we have a question for you, Romy, from a user, Eledi Vargas. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. This question is, when you are photographing with your friends, does the way you talk to each other change? Do they talk to you as a friend or as an artist slash photographer?
Um, I think it changes a little bit, I would say. I When they're in front of the camera, even if they have experience modeling, they could still find themselves like lost or insecure. But I think being very friendly and understanding, I guess, because being in front of a camera is very hard. Even if you love it so much, it definitely is hard. So I still try to be myself. I think once they realize, oh, it's just Romy, my friend, taking the photo, they become way more relaxed, and I think that results into a great photo. But I try to be a little bit like more dominant over taking photos because I guess that's just like the artist in me who wants that control of the photo, I guess.
So when you are photographing your friends, do you tend to direct them a little bit? So let's say they're posing like this, right? And do you tell them like, oh, raise your arm a little bit more, tilt your face, do this, do that? Do you tend to kind of guide them like that? Or do you find that your friends are kind of naturals with the posing?
I would say that they're naturals, but I don't tell them like, oh, put your arm down a bit more. I give them something like a not a prompt, but I will say, oh, be more passionate, act like this happened to you, act like your boyfriend broke up with you or something, not something evil like that, but I give them something to be passionate about in the photo.
That's what a director does on the set of a film, by the way. So I think that that's a good sign that you're going to end up succeeding in that industry. Thank you for answering that. Kara, there's a question for you, also from Eleni Vargas. When you photograph with folks on Indigenous reservations, do they see you as an artist or as an advocate for Native American communities?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the answer is both. I think that working in the industry of fine art is a little bit outside of the norm in our community. So definitely approaching some of the storytelling through fine art photography is outside or, outside of the box. But um, I also work with my friends and family for multiple reasons. One, to avoid the exploitive nature of photography and Native communities. And my work is really collaborative. So I'm never taking people's photograph and running off with the images to do my own thing. There's a lot of free, prior, and informed consent. So if I have an idea, I sit down with the person and we decide together, does this capture how you feel about your body, about your identity, about um, your environment or ecosystem, whatever it is that we're working together on. And I love those conversations because often they inform the creative process. And then even after editing, I check in with them again to make sure that they're okay with me sharing that. It's really important to me to always honor cultural sensitivity and cultural protocol in my work. And so it's not to say that there aren't mistakes that are made. You can't please everybody, even from your own community. But I try to always engage with the artwork with a lot of respect for my community and my culture. So I hope that answered your question.
Consent, respect, and sensitivity are definitely key. And we appreciate that explanation. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the Q&A portion. I'm going to go ahead and toss it back to the amazing team at Las Fotos Project. Go ahead, guys.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Stephanie, Kara, and Romy for that amazing conversation. I really appreciate that. And Kara, I think your last words are going to be resonating with me as well, at Las Fotos Project as well, organization and providing these mentorship opportunities. We always have that at the front of our minds as well. How do we continue to support our communities in an ethical way, in a way that respects their experiences as well. So I really, personally appreciate that as well. So yeah, thank you to everyone who joined us today, who joined us for this conversation. Really appreciate all of your support. for the photo awards, for our featured photographers and our honorees, as well as supporting our organization. As I mentioned, 100% of the proceeds from this weekend go to support our year-round photography mentorship programs to support students like Romy, as well as Annie and Miabella, who are our other two awardees this year. And I hope that you all will be able to join us tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be having a networking brunch. And this will be an opportunity for all of you all actually to connect with each other and chat and have discussions around photography and art, especially art education, entrepreneurship, and art as a tool for racial justice. So I really hope that you all will be able to join us tomorrow for our last event. And don't forget, our silent auction is also up. We have over 50 women photographers featured in our silent auction. It's an opportunity for you all, to support the work that these young women are doing through Las Fotos project, and then also to own a piece of artwork as well for your home or your office, or to gift, however it is that you want to do with that photograph. And thank you all again so much. Continue to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Las Fotos Project, and our website, lasfotosproject.org. We'll have many more student events throughout the year, as well as some updates for tomorrow as well. So thank you all. Really appreciate you all for being with us today and spending your day with us in conversation. Thank you, Kara and Romy again, and Stephanie for joining us. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much for this incredible experience. Romy, it's so good to know you too.
I know, it's so great to meet you. You guys are all so amazing.
Thank you all. Have a great night.